Hi, welcome to my channel. My name's Chance, and it's Friday, so that means it's time for some hot takes. You know what? I have an amazing brother and sister-in-law that also enjoys board games, and they sent me a gift recently. Firefly, the game. Super excited about this because I freaking love Firefly, so this is Goram shiny in my book. I'm super excited to give this one a play, and I realized, sci-fi is like my favorite genre, and I have not done let's say a sci-fi themed hot takes yet. Now, I'm going to ignore the big franchises. There's no Dune, no Star Wars in this one. I'm going more for the generic sci-fi. Generic may be a little mean for that, but oh well. We're going to be talking about some sci-fi games this Friday, and let's get things kicked off with a game that it's a little mean to talk about because it's out of print, but this one's relatively easy to get on the secondary market if you are interested in it after this review. I actually got an insanely good deal for it. Like, this was a Kickstarter, and I got like the deluxe edition for like $25 with free shipping on eBay. It was awesome. The game I'm talking about here is Godspeed. So Godspeed is a game that was put on my radar by the Board Game Hot Takes podcast. Note that I'm not trying to like steal their name, but it's just like hot takes is kind of a common phrase, and yeah, it just fit for what I'm doing on Fridays. So, but I do love the Board Games Hot Case podcast. They do a fantastic job, and they introduced me to some games that I've just never heard of. Godspeed was one of them. They talked about this. They mentioned the theme, and I was like, oh, that theme sounds super interesting. So the theme of this game is that the moon landing was a lie. Great start. But not a lie in the way that you may think it was a lie. So we actually did go up to the moon, but we found out behind the moon that there's like a warp portal back there, and that goes to an alien world. So this led to a space race that is essentially a bit of a cover up that people think we're going to the moon, but all these nations are actually going to this portal to colonize this other planet to extract these resources and use them for development or something. So right out of the gate, I'm like, I'm on board, all in on this weird theme for a game. Now, Godspeed itself, it's a worker placement game. Like, it is a tight worker placement game. Now, I will mention that I did almost sell this game. I was like struggling to table it. The setup is kind of a bit of a pain. Getting through the rules was harder than I thought. Like, the game is actually, once I played it, I'm like, this is really easy, and this rulebook should not be this hard to decipher. I don't feel like the rulebook's unclear anyway. It's just one of those things that I don't know. It's sometimes I read a rulebook and it just does not click. Like, the order, the flow of it just doesn't work. Like, even though everything is described well, it's just like it did not click for me, and I was like, this is just weird, confusing. Setup took forever, so I almost got rid of it out of my collection. But I finally got it played, and I played it at 3 players. I'll mention that I think the game's going to be best at 3 and 5 players. It seems like it's designed for those player counts. At 2 and 4, the game might be a little looser, which might take away some of that tension that it has. But I don't know. I can't really guarantee that at this point. At 3 players, though, the game was amazing. I loved it. Like, the guy I played it with, one of the people I played it with said, like, hey, if you're ever thinking about selling this again, like, let me know. I'll take this off your hands. And I'm like, look, after that play, I'm not selling this game. I loved it as well. So you're just gonna have to come over to my house. But yeah, I had a great time with Godspeed. Now, the game plays over a total of 10 rounds, and during each round, you're basically going to be taking like 2 worker space actions or whatever. But there's 2 phases before that are going to kind of change that play a little bit. So there's the council phase where there's an event that happens, and then that council card tells everyone that if you commit a specific type of worker, then you won't get this negative event to happen to you or whatever. Usually the negative events like move down on one of the, I don't know, 4 progress tracks that are out there. It's usually not too bad, but then if everyone commits the worker, you actually get this positive thing. It's usually like gain 1 extra resource, something. Nothing major. Now, I do feel like the rulebook, it tried to do something that maybe it shouldn't have, and maybe this was part of the reason why the game kind of flopped a little bit, was due to some missed expectations with that Kickstarter, because the designer describes this as a negotiation phase. But the problem is, it clearly says in the rulebook, you are not allowed to trade anything. Like, you have no ability to really negotiate with anyone. You can just make false promises, or I guess be very charismatic and convince players to commit their workers during this phase. So I don't know. When I taught the rules, I kind of made this clear. I was like, look, this is described as a negotiation phase, but you can't really do anything. So, you know what, we're not really treating this as negotiation. This is really just there. And one of the other players was like, oh yeah, so you just have to be very persuasive then. And I was like, yep, that's basically it. If you want to be very persuasive, go for it. But this phase is interesting because essentially it requires you to lock a specific worker to not get that negative impact. And like I said, if everyone does it, you get that bonus, but whatever. But each player has 5 workers, and everyone has the same 5 workers. They're numbered 2 to 7 in value, and that value will come up in the next phase. But essentially, yeah, so everyone has a captain, engineer, biologist, trader, and a ambassador. So you lock away 1 worker, maybe on that first phase. Then we go to the second phase. Second phase is the supply drop. So essentially there's a supply drop and it's a bidding phase. So you're actually going to bid 1 or more of your workers, or none if you don't want to get anything, and potentially use some resources that can boost your bid, and everyone's going to simultaneously reveal their bids. And whoever won the bid is going to be able to take the first selection from the supply drop. Now, one of the things in the supply drop is always the first player token, and that is the thing that is like competitive, right? Because it is like I said, tight worker placement. So taking that first player token can be critical to your strategy to going first in that turn order. So like, yeah, that's that bidding phase. I would say in the first like 2 or 3 rounds, it didn't seem that consequential. We were kind of like unsure on how to bid for this stuff. We're like, oh, what's the value of these things? But it plays over 10 rounds, so the game does a good job of teaching you in those first 3 rounds. It's like, and the consequences of bidding wrong in this one's not huge. So you're just kind of like ramping up. But then you get to round 4 and it's like, ooh, these supply drops are getting juicy. I might need to change my bidding strategy. And yeah, the way we bid completely changed over the course of the game, and I just loved it. I felt like it eased us in to that bidding phase at a good pace, where we kind of started to understand how it worked and understood the consequences of it. And by the end of the game, our bidding strategy was completely different than the beginning of the game. So just a really well done part of the game. And then the next phase, so this is the standard worker placement. Basically, it's like draw some cards, play a card, build a building. They were all very simple actions, like incredibly simple actions, which I enjoyed. Like, they were all very easy to understand and comprehend. You knew what you needed to do, and this is the part where that tight worker placement came in. Because if you notice, what the first 2 phases, that council phase and the bidding phase, are doing, they're locking away workers. And your workers are asymmetric because they can only go to certain spots on the board. So essentially, you're kind of planning out your everything in that council and your bidding phase around what workers you think you need during the action selection phase. Now, so everyone has to lock away the same worker in the council phase. And if that happens, you know, like everyone's locked away their engineer. And you're like, well, no one's going to the engineer spot this time. So that spot no one cares about. And now we're all down to the same 4 workers. Okay, then you go to the bidding phase. And 2 of you bid away, like let's say your ambassador and your trader. And you're like, that person has like the same 2 tokens I have. They could take my spot. So you know what they've been, and you're like, I think I need that first player token, because if they take my spot, I'm screwed. So you're locking away these workers in the earlier phases to restrict your options in that later phase. And those options that you are restricted to are going to be critical depending on what the other players are restricted to, because if they block those spaces that you need, then, oh man, yeah, you are in a lot of trouble. And then during those bidding phases, there's things that can kind of change this. Like, there are some cards that come up in those later supply drops that are going to be like, if you play this card, you get to take both your actions on 1 turn. So essentially, you can place both your workers on 1 turn. And this means that you can block out people just like instantly on your turn by just putting down both your workers and be like, no, you guys aren't taking those spots. I'm taking both these spots. So the game really leans into that worker placement blocking. And I think those first 2 phases, kind of whittling down your worker pool before you get to that final phase, it's just such a cool design, such a unique idea, that I had a blast with this. And then I would say that this, for like scoring and stuff, it leans into kind of those Euro race mechanics. Like, you are just racing up these tracks, you're racing to get these milestone markers. So yeah, it is the interaction for the points is really that race mechanic. And it does a great job. Like, usually that's not my favorite way to interact in the game, but with that tight worker placement and that race to complete these things, because like some of those races are blocked by worker placement spots. Like, one's to build your 4 production buildings, and there's only 1 spot to build a production building. So if someone goes there and they're beating you there every time, they're going to get that milestone marker before you. So I think that the interaction that this drives, it's really good. So I do really enjoy Godspeed. It is, I think it's an underrated gem out there. I'm excited to return this one to my table. I want to try it at 5 players. It played pretty snappy at 3, so I think it'll do well at the higher player count as well. Like I said, out of print, but it's one that if you are interested in it, check out some other reviews. Maybe check out see if there's other things that you might want to be concerned about. I would say that if you're not into the idea of kind of like being blocked out of being able to take your action and do your thing in a Euro style game, then this isn't for you. But if you like that interaction where you're able to like screw someone over, or you're not too concerned about being screwed over by someone else, I think this game shines. I think that it does a really good job. So yeah, Godspeed. It's moving up my list pretty rapidly on my top 50 basically. All right, let's move on to my second game of this review. This is one that showed up on the BGG hotness recently, and I didn't really understand why, but I was like, it brought it back into my mind. I was like, oh, that's interesting. This game's going to be Gravwell. So Gravwell is a chaotic little game where, depending on player count, like if there's, I don't know, 3 players or something, you're all going to start in the center of the board, and there's like a spiral going out, and you're basically racing around that spiral to get to the end spot. Now, if there's more players, I think like you're on a split between starting in the center and then other players starting on the edge, and basically you're just trying to get to the opposite end of that spiral. Whoever makes it to their opposite end first wins the game. But the way the game works is that the race is you are simultaneously selecting cards to play, and then you're going to process those cards in an initiative order. So there's going to be cards with like more movement value, but they're going to process later in initiative order. And the way your movement works is that you're either going to be playing like an attractor card or a repulsor card, and that means that you're either going to move towards the object that's closest to you. So basically gravity, the game is kind of playing on this idea that everything has like a massive gravity field around it, and you're either being pulled towards something or you're being repulsed away from something. So basically you're going to process that movement based on the object that is closest to your ship. And this is critical because things that'll happen, like people will play those 1 or 2 movement cards, whatever, and they're going to go first in turn order. So they have kind of like a better guarantee that objects are going to be where they expect them to be. Because essentially, by the later turn order, objects can be in completely different spots, and your whatever 6 movement card that you expect to move forward with, because there was an object like 2 spaces in front of you, you're like, oh yeah, I'm definitely gonna move forward. But then somebody put their ship like directly behind you in their space, and now they're closest to you, and now you're moving 6 spaces backwards instead of 6 spaces forwards. So it's this game where you are constantly trying to like leapfrog other people. You're trying to judge what other people are trying to do on their turn. Are they going to go for a big move and try to slingshot in front of you? Or are they going to do a small move to be behind you and force you to move behind them? So like you're trying to play off of what you think other people need during that simultaneous card selection. And it just creates for just a chaotic gameplay experience that I really, really enjoy. You do get one opportunity during the game to use like your stop card. Basically, it's like, I screwed up, I'm going to stop. I am not going to activate this card. I think you get to do that one time per round of like, I think 6 cards for a round or something like that. And yeah, it's just, I find this game to just be a blast. It's very enjoyable. And then between rounds, so like you're going to play out those, whatever, 6 cards or so that you have, there's going to be a draft where you're going to be able to draft 2 sets of 3 cards. I think 2 of them are face up, 1 is face down in those sets. So you can kind of see what you need. You can also do some hate drafting because you can kind of see like what the other person needs. Maybe the person in the lead, they need like the repulsor cards because there's no one in front of them to pull them forward. So they need the cards that'll repulse them away from pieces. And you're like, I'm not letting you have those repulsor cards, so I'm going to hate draft these away from you. So you can kind of block somebody. And I think that, yeah, the draft works great. The little chaotic simultaneous card play works great. It is a joy for me to play. The only problem I have with this game is that I would say it does seem to outstay its welcome. By the time that we are nearing the end, it's kind of like, I wish it was a little bit shorter. I wish we could wrap this up a little bit quicker. It tends to outstay its welcome by like 10, 15 minutes. It's this game that if it could just shave off a little bit, I think it would be just phenomenal. But at its current, and it does play a pretty high player count, and it plays pretty fast, or it plays at a decent time at all player counts because of the simultaneous play. But yeah, it is one that when we do get down to those last phases, I'm like, ooh, is it over yet? And I will mention that this one may be replaced for me with Wandering Towers. I feel like Wandering Towers plays in a shorter time frame, has a really cool idea going on with it. It's also another little chaotic circular track that you're racing around with the other players. It doesn't have the simultaneous play, but I have been pulling out Wandering Towers more, and I feel like it kind of falls in that same category as Gravwell. It's like a pretty short, little chaotic game that people tend to enjoy. So yeah, it's one that, like, if I was to make a recommendation, I would probably recommend Wandering Towers over Gravwell, but I still really like Gravwell, so I don't think it's a bad choice. But it's something that yeah, I'd probably recommend seeing if you can play it before buying it and seeing if that's your jam or not. So that'll do it for Gravwell. Another enjoyable one. Moving on, let's move on to something a little more calculating, a little more thinky, and this is going to be Beyond the Sun. Beyond the Sun is one of my favorite board games. I think it's in my top 20. I'm pretty sure it's in my top 20. If not top 30, it's definitely in my top 30, probably in my top 20. And I would say this is probably because of a little bit of subjectivity to it. Let's start off, what is Beyond the Sun? So Beyond the Sun is an action selection Euro game with a little bit of an area control component in it. Basically, you are going to be selecting actions to try to research technology and to try to influence this colonization board, which is the area control part of it. But for the most part, you're building out this tech tree. So that's another way that people like to call this game. It's like the tech tree of the board game. But it's cool because you're not building out your individual tech tree. You're building out humanity's tech tree. So it's basically like each one of you is playing as a different faction, a different like corporation. And you are going to be researching these techs, and those are going to go on their own little branching paths of like maybe military or commerce or I forget all the science or something or exploration. So those things you're gonna branch those off. But when someone puts down a tech card, that is now the tech card that goes on that spot on the main board for all players. So now another player can go in and research that and use your tech. Basically, you as a corporation, you're kind of defining the direction that humanity is going, and eventually other corporations are going to catch up and research that same tech that you did. And I love the tech in this game. Let's come back to that. Let's hit the area control board really quick, because there is this sideboard. It's smaller. It has these planets that you're trying to colonize. You're going to be moving around these ships, and then your goal is to basically have a majority on that planet and to meet the threshold for colonization. Because that's one of the kind of end game goals in the game, is to colonize planets. As you colonize planets, you might be able to put out your achievement disc, and essentially once the game hits a certain number of achievement discs, the game will end. So it is a resource management, area control, action selection game. Very on the Euro side, but has a good blend of mechanics. And I think the area control board with the colonization just ties in so well to that tech tree. And then talking about that tech tree, this is where the game, a lot of people complain about the production, kind of like there's very little art in the game. The tech cards, they just really have a name on them and that's it. But I get drawn into this theme. Like I feel like the game does a lot with very little. And it's probably because of all the sci-fi I've read, all the sci-fi movies I've watched, just my history with sci-fi. Like I am more of a sci-fi junkie than I am with fantasy. Like I just love sci-fi. I read sci-fi books all the time. So I think there is some subjectivity with this game where I get drawn into the titles of those cards. Like when I see them, I build out the story of my corporation or my civilization or whatever. Like I go down the route of like, ooh, I'm gonna develop human cloning because I need to have more population. Like I'm really struggling with my population here. And then the next card I draw on that path, I'm like, I look at the two that I get to choose from for my tech tree, and one of like human experimentation. And I need more people for this. And it's like, well, after doing the human cloning card, I kind of have a surplus of people. So you know what? I am going to do some human experimentation for this and move on. So I get to see the history of my corporation and see the good and maybe immoral decisions that my corporation has made over the course of history. And I just have an absolute blast with that. Like I really get drawn into the title of those tech cards. So the game, it speaks to me, right? So that's where I have to call out that, yeah, the game is subjective for me, but I do think mechanically this game is also just phenomenal. Like if you check out other reviews of Beyond the Sun, like people praise this game for its design. I think it just does an amazing job. I will call out that I do have the expansion for Beyond the Sun as well. I played with it once. I think they updated some of the cards for balance issues, but I don't play games enough times to understand the balance issues. I really just have a good time playing games. Don't really care about balance issues most of the time. But if you want that balance correction, then there is the expansion out there. The other expansion elements, I think they're fine. I don't play with them most of the time because it is teaching extra rules, and I feel like it bogs down the game a little bit. And I like kind of the streamlinedness of Beyond the Sun. Like it's a pretty easy game to play once you figure it out. Like it's really, really straightforward. So overall, Beyond the Sun, it is a big hit for me. I love Beyond the Sun. It is one that's definitely staying in my collection for a very long time. If you are into Euros, then yes, I think that this one is a great choice. But if you don't like that area control, that little competitiveness for that colonization board, then maybe you're not going to like it. But I think it does a fantastic job with blending that action selection with the tech tree with the colonization board, and it gives people different pathways to win. Like you can completely ignore the colonization board and go down your own path of going down like a resource collection path or something. So I think the game does a phenomenal job. It's really well designed, and highly recommend checking it out if you haven't. It's an older one though, so if you haven't heard of it by now, then I don't know. But if you missed it, check out some other reviews. Really good. Okay, let's get into next game, number 4 on my list for my hot takes this Friday. This is going to be Cryo. Now, Cryo is my introduction to a designer named Luke Laurie. I'll talk about him a little bit more, but what is the theme of Cryo? So Cryo is a space game where essentially you are one of the factions that was on this exploratory ship of some sort. Think of it as like a UN program where there are a few factions on this ship, but it has crash landed on an ice planet. And I guess someone sabotaged it. Someone must have sabotaged it. That's the only way this thing would have crashed. And you don't know who sabotaged it, so you trust none of the other factions on the ship. And essentially, on this ice planet, once the sun goes down, everyone on the surface is going to die. So now your goal is to get all of your faction below the ground into these caverns before night falls, so you can save as many of your crew as possible. And you don't care about the rest of the crew because you don't trust any of them. Someone did sabotage, so you're done with those other factions. UN's falling apart. So that's right there. Why I don't know why that's the theme, but I really enjoy it. That's how I open the game. I open the game with the theme so everyone understands what the situation is on this planet. And then there's going to be there's going to be a little more sabotage in the game. Like you can actually apply these sabotage tokens to different areas of the life support areas to destroy people's crew members. So there is a little bit of take that. I would say it's pretty innocuous. It's not like the big part of the game. And I find that a lot of people, like, you actually tend to have a choice between like a resource and destroying a crew member. And a lot of times people really need the resource. So it's usually a lot of times in my games, those ones that destroy crew members are the last tokens to get taken. Like usually it's the person's like, I wanted a resource, but now I have to destroy a crew member. But every now and again, it's kind of nice to have that threat out on the board and to be like, ooh, if you don't get your crew saved from that area, I might blow them up. So there is a little bit of take that. But for the most part, this is going to be a resource management worker placement game. It has all the standard fair worker placement stuff where it's like, okay, you're only one worker per spot, so you can kind of block people out of areas. And you have these 3 drones, which are your workers. But the cool thing is that once you place out at least one drone, and once you have all 3 of your drones, you have to do this, is the recall turn. So instead of it being like, I just recall my workers, I'm done, next player takes their turn, the recall turn is actually where you get to activate your little engine. It's kind of an engine. It's more of like your own resource converter. So in Cryo, on your player board, you're going to have these little slots that as you go out of the board, you can take these tokens that are for resources, and you can actually slot them into your board. And these slots are going to be like, you can put one on top, and that's the cost you pay, or you can put one on bottom, and that's the benefit you get. So you can build up your own little conversion engine. Maybe you're like, I'm going to convert crystals into tech. I'm going to get a 1 crystal tile, and I'm going to convert that into 2 tech. So when I recall my drone, I can spend a crystal, convert that to 2 tech, and I got myself a little engine of resource conversion. I build up my own economy that I'm trying to focus on. Someone else is focused on plants. Someone else is focused on energy. Someone else is focused on card play. Like there's a couple different paths you could go with your own little economic engine. And I absolutely love this part of it because you're really doing what's best for you. You get to design your own player board, and it's it's unique in the space. Like I've never played anything like it, and I have a great time with it. Now the other part of it, you have these cards that you can play. The cards are triple use, so you can either put them down as an upgrade to your platform, and that's going to be a permanent upgrade for the game. Maybe it's like you get to now land your drone on destroyed docks, because at the beginning of the game, you're going to have some tokens that'll destroy some of the docking spaces, which are your worker placement spaces. And if you get that upgrade that allows you to destroy docks, well, now you don't get blocked out of spaces as often as other players, which is really nice. So there's a bunch of upgrades like that, and then there's some, you can play them as mission cards. Those mission cards will give you different end game scoring bonuses. So when you start the game, you don't necessarily have one strategy that you're going to go after for winning the game. You're actually going to have your cards, and you're going to be like, "Ooh, maybe I'm going to go after this mission," and like that's going to be my strategy for this game. I'm going to do so. Like you can kind of define your own path in the game, kind of like you're defining your own path with those resource conversions. And then finally, you have the vehicles. The vehicles are how you get your crew down into the caverns for that little area majority game. So you have those cards. You have to decide which ones you want to use for which which is another just a really good puzzle. And I feel like the cards play well together. Like there's one card that it holds a lot of people, but the mission is also getting a lot of people into the caverns. So it's like, well, if I get the mission for getting people into the caverns, I now am forfeiting this card that holds a lot of people. So wait, that's a trade-off. Oh man. so it does a good job with those cards. And there's only like, I don't know, 6 different cards in the entire deck. There's a lot of repetitive cards in there. So you're going to see the same cards multiple times. And that's part of the kind of strategy of the game, is like figuring out which cards you're trying to go for. And it also makes teaching the game pretty easy, because like the cards they're relatively self-explanatory, and they're not all unique, which is kind of nice. You don't have to worry about just edge cases on them. Like they're all very well designed, very well written, and yeah, just really, really easy game to teach. So Cryo is just this game that I absolutely love playing. It's one of my favorite worker placement games. It's up there. It's up there with Beyond the Sun. It's probably in my top 20 as well. And yeah, because it's kind of like that recall mechanism, I really, really like that. And that's what put Luke Laurie on my radar. I've gotten a few of his other games now. Whistle Mountain is another one I really enjoy of his. I also have Manhattan Project Energy Empire, which just had a reprint campaign. So that one should be delivering soon and coming back to retail, hopefully. I highly recommend checking that one out. And then this will lead into my final game in the category. Before that, let's just wrap up Cryo. So yeah, Cryo is one that is staying in my collection for quite a while. I always enjoy playing it, and it is a really, really nicely designed little worker placement. So let's move on to my last game of this hot takes, and this is going to be another Luke Laurie game, much, much bigger box, Andromeda's Edge. So this one also has a campaign going on GameFound for an expansion, plus you can get the deluxe edition again and everything. And I want to do a full review of this game because I have a lot to say about Andromeda's Edge. And this is where one of my subscribers gave me a channel name idea called like Chance Game Rants, and I feel like this right here, this section should be called Chance Game Rants, because I have a lot of ranting on Andromeda's Edge. I feel like, so I had high expectations for this game, so that might have been part of the issue with this, is that I absolutely love that recall mechanic. I loved Cryo so much. I sought out Whistle Mountain. I sought out Manhattan Project Energy Empire because of it, and each one of those games has been a hit for me. Like I tend to not, Euro is not my favorite category, but these ones, they hit for me. Like I really like playing them. So Andromeda's Edge, I had a lot of anticipation for, and I was kind of expecting kind of this epic space game, maybe kind of towards Eclipse, but better. Like I like Eclipse. Eclipse was fun. I've only played it once. There were certain things I felt like it took too long. So, there's certain things that I didn't enjoy, but maybe I was putting Andromeda's Edge up on that pedestal, and maybe I just had too high of expectations for it, because I was expecting this just epic space 4X game. And what I got was a tracky Euro. That's how I'm going to describe it. So let's describe the game really quick. In Andromeda's Edge, you're going to start out with a faction. You have a little bit of asymmetry with your starting, and those factions are kind of going to define your strategy for the game, which is something I'm not a huge fan of. I feel like the faction kind of locks you into a specific strategy. I feel like games that do better with asymmetry, they tend to give you a nudge in a direction. They're like, ooh, you might want to check this out, but you don't have to do it. Whereas Andromeda's Edge, I feel like if you don't lean into your faction enough, you're going to do pretty poorly. So it kind of is like you get dealt your faction, like, this is what I'm doing for this game. So that's something that I'm not crazy about, but I do like the variability. There's a lot of factions in the deluxe edition, so there's a ton of variations that you can kind of explore with that. Now, you're also going to have your ships, which are basically your workers. This is essentially a worker placement game, kind of like Cryo. You're going to be putting out your ships, taking actions in those spots, blocking those spots from other players, and then eventually doing that recall phase. So, like a lot of these words that I'm saying are that you should be flashing Cryo right now, right? So that's the general flow of this game. You're collecting resources and stuff, and then you're also going to be upgrading your player board. Once again, Cryo, you're going to be upgrading your player board. So it's you're going to be collecting these cards that are going to be basically your engine in the game, and then during that recall, you're going to be able to take your ships and start activating those cards to do like your resource conversion, your resource generation, generating energy, your energy row. Like as long as you have energy, you can kind of activate all your cards. Usually you need a ship to activate it, but yeah, that energy row kind of breaks those rules, and you can kind of build up a really strong engine in certain cases. And yeah, you're doing that recall turn to do your activation for that's like your big turn is your recall. And then you're going out and you're trying to build these buildings. I want to say dwellings, but that was Dwellings of Otherville. Never got to play Dwellings of Otherville, so I can't compare Andromeda's Edge to Dwellings. But essentially, that is the focus of Andromeda's Edge, is doing these developments, is putting these buildings out on the map. And the reason you're doing this is because you're trying to move up these specific tracks. So moving up those tracks are going to give you multipliers for your score as long as you have those buildings built. So you're trying to move up tracks, build buildings matching the tracks, and get score multipliers. So, yeah. Okay, some other stuff in the game. There's going to be some raiders out there. I got to talk about the combat really quick. So the raiders are going to be out on the board, and essentially, like at the end of your turn, you're going to check for if the raiders are in range. If they're in range, they're going to move into your spot. They're going to trigger a raider strike. You're also going to do combat with the other players at the table if they want to move into your spot. So, and then combat is going to work in a weird way. You have these diplomacy cards. Everyone gets to play a diplomacy card first if they want. Now, I will call out that some of the cards are just like straight up like boost the combat, or it's going to be like, here, make this a 6 die roll or something. We'll get to why that's important in a second, but some of the diplomacy cards are literally just, this combat doesn't happen. And this is another part of the game where this didn't land for me. I didn't like having combat just canceled. I don't know. It's like when someone takes their turn in the game and their actions are just negated, that's usually bad game design. Now, I wouldn't say that this like negates someone's actions, but essentially if you're expecting that combat to happen and someone just plays a diplomacy card that's just like, no combat, it's like, okay, well, I needed that ship to die, or I needed to do this combat. Like, what? Sure. I feel like that's not exciting when that happens. It should be exciting because it adds in that chaotic element, which I usually enjoy in games, but this was a turnoff for me. I didn't really care for that. Now onto the combat. Basically, for combat, you're going to collect a certain number of dice. You're going to have a certain targeting value. Targeting is basically like the minimum die roll you need to get a hit, but the game doesn't work by like health and stuff like that. Basically, all players are going to roll their die, and they're going to do a single roll. And then you're going to order your die from the highest to smallest die. And then whoever has the highest die wins the combat. And then if you're tied for highest, you're going to look at the second highest. Whoever has the second highest die wins. Then if that one's tied, you're going to look at the third highest. So essentially, you're just going to keep going down that line and see who wins the combat. This means two things. One, combat tends to be pretty predictable. So you're doing one die roll, and usually the person with the higher target or the lower targeting and the more dice, they're usually going to win. They usually have higher odds of rolling like a 6 or something, right? If you're rolling 5 dice and the person's rolling 1 die, your odds are better than their odds of rolling a 6. So usually that's how it works. But it can also be incredibly swingy. Let's say that one person rolling the 1 die, they roll a 6, and the person rolling the 5, they roll 5 5s. The person with the 5 5s has just lost that combat. Does that make sense? I don't know. So, but now I can see why they did this. They made this so combat was easy and quick to resolve. And they put the probability in favor of the person with the most strength. Like, it is clearly skewed. And this is something from what I understand, they corrected from Dwellings of Otherville. And I think they did correct it, but they made it less exciting. I don't know, so I shouldn't say made it less exciting from Dwellings of Otherville. I'd say from other games. Like, I'm thinking about Dune War for Arrakis. I'm thinking about combat in that one. And we go through multiple battle phases of rolling those dice and whittling down our troops. that choice of continuing conflict, that is a fun choice in Dune. So essentially, like you roll those dice, you're like, oh crap, I took more losses than I thought. I end this conflict. I cease attacking. Sorry, I can't continue this. Or it's like, oh, I continue attacking. Let's do this. I'm going to continue whittling down. And that's part of the excitement of the combat. Now, I would say taking that to its extreme, like Eclipse. I feel like Eclipse, you can have so many misses and like those combat rolls can just drag on forever. Like you're just constantly rolling. It's like miss, 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 hit. So I feel like, yeah, Eclipse is at one extreme where I don't like it. I don't want to do Eclipse combat because of those dice rolls. And then Andromeda's Edge says, okay, we're going to take it down and do a single dice roll, and that's going to resolve all a conflict. It also took away any excitement that I had in conflict. I will say that the conflict is not super detrimental in the game, so they did a good job of that. Even though it can be swingy, it's like not the end of the world. If you lose all your ships, they just go to this graveyard section, and it can be pretty easy to repair. When you do the recall action, you can still use them. So I don't know. It's not like the worst thing in the world that the combat is swingy, but it like I don't know. It doesn't land all that well. It doesn't feel right to me in the game. There are so many things in this game that I just did not hit for me at all. There's the fact that I was expecting an epic space game and it ended up being this tracky Euro. Like I said, you're basically just trying to move up these tracks to score more points by the end of the game. It is a points race for the finish. Like there's no epic finish. That it ends with a bit of a whimper because essentially it's like you put out a threshold marker on the score track and whoever crosses that track triggers the end of the game, and it's just like, oh, okay. Like what was the epic finale there? It's like, oh, we just developed the most. So that was epic, right? I don't know. The end of the game, there was nothing exciting about the end of the game. It wasn't like, oh, I won. It was just like I got the most points. Or I hit the score threshold first, because that's not even a guarantee of winning the game, because then you got to do end game scoring. So then the other problem I have with it is that the game gives you so many toys. There's so many toys in the box. There's all these cool raiders. There's all these cool ships. There's a lot of variability in your ship upgrades and stuff that you can get. But I felt like the game doesn't care about any of that. The game just says, no, you want to do these tracks. Like after playing it, I realized like all the toys are just noise in the game. It's like if you're not moving up those tracks, then you're not going to do well in the game. And this is that part where I felt like what was fun in the game was separate from what was strategic in the game. And when you have that decoupling, that's where a game falls flat for me, because I want the game to lean into what's fun. And I felt like Andromeda's Edge, it leaned so far away from what's fun that I struggled to have a good time with it. I will mention I've only played this once multiplayer. I played it about 5 times solo. I will state that I did it solo because, like I said, I had high expectations for this game and I wanted to like it. I really, really wanted to like Andromeda's Edge. It's sci-fi, it's big, it's bombastic, has chaos. Like everything about it says like I should enjoy this game. So I was thinking to myself, I was like, maybe it's because it wasn't smooth. I needed to know the rules better. Maybe if I get into the flow of the game, I could start to understand this better, and it would run smoothly, and we would just have a good time with it at the table. But even solo, I was just struggling to get into the flow of it. And that's another thing to call out is flow. So flow at multiplayer. Some of the turns are going to take you about 10 seconds to process. Someone's going to put out their ship. They're going to take a moon token and be like, I'm done with my turn. And then you're going to get to one player and they're going to be like, buckle up, guys. I'm doing a recall action. And now it's going to take 2 to 5 minutes for me to do my turn. And everyone else is just sitting there. The next player might be like, hey, is anything you're doing going to impact the board in any way? And they're probably going to be like, no, it's going to be great. I'm going to take my turn. I don't want to wait for this. So, it's just like, so it does like the same thing in Cryo. Like it has the same flow in Cryo, but due to that recall turn being so long in Andromeda's Edge, it makes the game fall apart for me. Like Cryo, those actions during the recall, they're very simple. They're like, oh, do this thing, convert 1 resource to two resource. Do this thing, play a card. They're very quick. So even though Cryo kind of has the same flow, it's like, okay, what your turn is going to take, I don't know, 30 seconds to your placement, maybe a minute and a half or so for your recall. But it's like the delta's not that big. But the delta for a turn in Andromeda's Edge is like either 10 seconds or 4 minutes. And yeah, it just ruins the flow of the game. The game grinds to a halt during those recall phases. So I will admit that I still, I don't know. Maybe it's because I committed to GameFound. I have that sunk cost fallacy with this one. Like I still want to like this game. I want to table it again. I want to do a full review of this. But before I do that, I have to play it again multiplayer because I feel like it's unfair to judge that game, that big of a game, based on a single multiplayer play. Even though I played it a lot solo at this point, I do want to get another multiplayer play in it. And also the expansion. The expansion has some stuff in it that I'm like excited about. Like once again, I'm like, oh, maybe this is gonna fix it. It adds like a cosmic frog mini, and I'm like, oh, I want that cosmic frog mini. It adds in the fact that you can like take control of the raiders, which is something that I wanted in the first game. So there's things. It's like, ooh, this comes with more toys. I want to play with the toys, but I'm pretty sure it's just going to be like, oh, here's more toys for you, but you still need to move up those tracks. And I'm like, no, not tracks. So that's how I feel about Andromeda's Edge. It is a game that I wanted to like so badly, but it has fallen so flat for me that it's one that I don't want to get rid of because I want to have a good experience with it, but I just haven't. So I can't recommend Andromeda's Edge. If you are interested, like Luke Warry, I think does a fantastic job, and the game I recommend of his is Cryo. Cryo is the one that I think is great. It is a lighter weight. It lands in the weight category that I enjoy. The interaction in it is something I enjoy. I love the worker placement mechanic. I love the recall mechanic. Like, so if I was to recommend one of Luke Warry's space games, I would recommend Cryo over Andromeda's Edge. So yeah, it is what it is. maybe I'll like it one day. We'll see once I come out with my Andromeda's Edge review. Maybe that expansion is going to fix everything. I don't know. I doubt it, but we'll see. Okay, so that's going to do it for my hot takes this Friday. Let's do a quick wrap up like I usually do. So Godspeed, I love the game. It was a tight worker placement game, kind of a little wonky on the learning, and the setup was a bit of a pain, but I just had a blast with this game. Like I said, out of print, but you can get it pretty cheap on the secondary market. So if you are interested in it, if I piqued your interest in it, I think it's worth picking up. Gravwell. Gravwell is a chaotic little race game, simultaneous play, plays pretty quick, has a high player count, but it can outstay its welcome. So I do think that's a bit of a downside with Gravwell. I do still have it in my collection. It just doesn't hit the table very often. I think Wandering Towers may have replaced it for me because I feel like it plays in a more consistent time frame, and I have a blast with it, and kind of, I don't know, for me it scratches that same itch of that chaotic race game. Next up, Beyond the Sun. I absolutely love this Euro game. It is fantastic. I love the tech tree, and I love the that area control component of it. And I have that, subjective experience of just sci-fi. Like I really, really love the sci-fi genre. And Beyond the Sun, with that little bit of text on those tech cards, did I say text or tech? I don't know. That little bit of text on the tech cards, it brings me into that world, and I create this story and this universe in my head. So yeah, that definitely plays a role in my love of Beyond the Sun, but I do think it is still like a fantastic mechanical game as well. Next up, Cryo. Cryo is one of my favorite kind of lightweight worker placement games. It is a really, really easy teach, has a weird theme that I really enjoy. I love the slight take that with those sabotage tokens where you can threaten somebody with their people in their life pods. So I like that interaction. I love the recall mechanic, and I didn't even mention that recall mechanic is basically a way to control turn order as well, which became super important as my group played Cryo more. So yeah, Cryo is one. That is the Luke Warrior game that I recommend. I also love Whistle Mountain and Manhattan Project Energy Empire, just FYI. So that's a trio of games that have Luke Warrior's name on it that I really enjoy. And then finally, Andromeda's Edge has Luke Warrior's name on it, but I did not enjoy it. I want to enjoy it. I want to play it again, and I want to have the experience I was expecting with the game, but I just don't think it's going to happen. One day I'll get a review of it out, but I need to play it again multiplayer before that happens. So, and like I said, I'm crazy and back the expansion because, like I said, I really, really want to enjoy the game. Okay, that's going to do it for my hot takes this Friday. As always, I want to thank you for watching. Oh, and you know what? If you say I'm completely wrong, maybe leave some comments below. Let me know if I am just entirely off base on Andromeda's Edge. Tell me I'm an idiot and unsubscribe. That's what I need to know about this game. Or tell me that I'm doing it wrong. I don't know. Yeah. So that's going to do it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for spending your time with me. I appreciate it as always, and I will talk to you next time.